worry about
I
it.
think I can wing it.
Good Lord, after all this time.
Just kidding.
Just the short and sweet is good. Here he is
Here
again.
it is. He's been in prison.
Exactly. I've served time, done time. Yeah, exactly.
Okay, well, I'm full of stimulants now. 3, 2, 1. Well, hello and welcome. I'm Terry Lovelace, and this is The Devil's Den. I'm joined by Erin Montgomery.
Hello.
Say hello, Erin.
Hello. Glad to be here.
Today's guest is Dr. Bruce Olaf Solheim, PhD, distinguished professor of history at Citrus College in Glendora, California, and my personal friend, author of many books on history, maybe a dozen, author of the book Allie's Bees, which I heartily recommend, and author of a trilogy called Timeless, which we'll have some photographs of. And Bruce published his first Timeless book in the series about the same time I published Incident at Devil's Den. His books are absolutely amazing. There's a nice blurb in it by Dr. Dean Radin, chief scientist of the Institute of Noetic Sciences. And Dr. Radin says, let me see, it says, the scientific world has no patience for the paranormal. Is that right?
Yeah.
So I think that's changing. So
Yeah, I think so.
Just briefly, Dr. Bruce is a Fulbright scholar, former U.S. Army helicopter pilot, among many other things, very talented man who is fluent in speaking about telepathy, precognition, clairvoyance, near-death experiences, reincarnation, apparitions, and communications with non-human entities. So with that being said, welcome.
Well, thank you both. Yeah, it's great to be here.
And Erin, you had some news from history that you wanted to share with us briefly, did you not?
I do. I was doing the esoteric history of the day the other day just to see what happened on February 28th in history. And I was very surprised and pleased to see that it was the anniversary of the very beginning of the witch hunts in Salem, Massachusetts, which happened in 1692. I mean, there had been some things leading up to this, but February 28th was the day that 11-year-old Abigail Williams and 9-year-old Elizabeth Parris were actually pretty much coerced into confessing that, yes, the afflictions that they were suffering, because they had all of these symptoms where they were almost like epileptic seizures. I think they were, flopping around and saying things that they couldn't control and just acting very, very strange. But they said, yes, it was witchcraft that was causing it. And they named their accusers, or not accusers, named the people that were oppressing them. And that would have been Tituba, who was a slave, and Sarah Good and Sarah Osborne. And it was the next day, February 29th. So that means it was a leap year that the arrest warrants went out for these women. So having practiced witchcraft and understood this for many, many years, it was very interesting to see that here we are on this very interesting anniversary.
Interesting it is. Our legal system's come a long way, thank God.
Absolutely. The one person that said, okay, yes, I'm a witch, she was let go and was free. Well, free she could be. She was the slave. So I find that very interesting.
Was it a plea bargain?
It very well could be. And I don't see how what she was practicing was any different than, what she would have grown up doing. I think she was from Haiti. I could be wrong, but it was just very natural for her. There was nothing to do with signing a devil's book or anything like that. It was just part of her normal practice. So it was the ones who said, no, it wasn't me, I didn't do anything, that were ultimately killed.
Well, a sad chapter. But on the
Very.
bright side, I need to remind everyone, please, this is a new venture for us. And if you could like and subscribe, please, we'd very much appreciate it. So do the thing down there and leave us any comments. We appreciate your criticisms and your compliments and anything you'd like to add. Thank you so much. And with that, Dr. Bruce, welcome again.
Hey, thank you.
Can you tell us what's new?
Oh, let's see. My second Snark comic book, it's actually a graphic novel this time because it's longer. It's coming out this month, in March, this coming month. And so the continuing adventures of Snark, intergalactic traveler, and alien hybrid. So hits on a lot of themes that you guys will be talking about. He's going to be coming out in March, and Gary Dumm's the artist, and it's so much fun to do. I love comic books because I can, with the other books, the timeless books, they're all nonfiction, so the comic book's fiction, but there's a lot of nonfiction in there. I'm not going to say which parts, but it's in there, so you can disguise stuff in these comic books, and you can really do anything with pictures, words and pictures. So, and the other
weaving that in,
yeah,
the fiction and the nonfiction together to make it a little bit easier to swallow, huh?
Yeah, that's it. And I throw in history because Snark visits historical sites, can travel in time, so he has a lot of fun. We deal with a lot of social issues in not a pedantic way, just through the eyes of an alien, or at least half alien, trying to understand human culture. And of course, his big dilemma, Snark's big dilemma, is that he's been sent to Earth to prepare us, the Earth, humans, for colonization by the reptilians, who we all know. And so he's half reptilian, and he decides he's not going to do that. So now his handlers, as the word you've used before, Terry, are mad at him and are coming back to do the mission themselves, since Snark failed in that mission to prepare us for colonization. He likes us. He ends up liking us. So that's kind of what's going on in the second one, and it takes it even further. So that's fun. I already got another spin-off comic book that I've drafted for something after that. So that I've been working on that. And the big thing, and this is really prompted by Terry, is a book called Anzar that I'm working on. And I already have a lot of it written because I've been keeping journals from my spirit walks for the past 3 years, and using those plus a 40-page research article that I wrote for MUFON to put into this book, which is not, Anzar it's not going to be a comic book. There's no illustrations. So it's a scholarly book with some memoir in it, but directly looking at this ancient alien mystic contact that I have. And so it's going to be more laser focused on that and what he has told me. So
is that in Ray Hernandez volume of what, Beyond UFOs?
That one, I did one for him too. So I'm trying to remember, was it MUFON or was it Ray Hernandez's group? Maybe it was Ray Hernandez I did this for, or maybe I did an article for both of them. I can't remember now, but I'm using that research material to put into this book, along with my own personal experiences with this entity named Anzar. So I'm pretty busy. And then I got we're producing plays online. The latest one is called Allie's Bees that you mentioned. We turned that into a stream play. And a stream play is basically a theater play that's done live and online with remote actors and remote locations across the United States, put into a 3D virtual world setting that our technical director has come up with. And we're producing that and performing that for schools around the country. We did our test one already in Southern California, and now we're opening up for other schools. And by the way, we're doing that for free for schools for now until we, get things going. But I wanted to do that because the message of Allie's Bees is so powerful for young people. This idea, it's anti-bullying. It looks at different cultures, cooperation, loving your neighbor, that kind of, plus it deals with the bees, which I know, Terry, you're very interested in, the plight of the honeybees and how if we lose those honeybees, we've lost 1/3 of our food supply. So they're a lot more important than people think.
Yes, they are.
So I love honeybees. The ironic thing is that I'm deathly allergic to bees, but I love them. So I have kind of a pact with them. When I see a bee, I say, okay, I'm doing everything I can to protect you, so don't sting me.
That's right. That's right. Yeah. Well, you grew up. Your mother was psychic.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that was kind of accepted in your family, but at least by your mother.
Yeah, my mom accepted all this, the psychic world, the paranormal, and my dad, not so much. He was a fisherman and a carpenter. If you imagine The Deadliest Catch, that's the kind of guy he was, up in Alaska. Pretty hardcore guy, a wonderful father, but, very much that type of practical working class guy, blue collar. And he did not like the paranormal stuff. When my mom and I would read cards, read each other's minds, practice telepathy, he'd let it go for a while. And then if we got a really good hit rate going, he'd shut it down and say, okay, that's it. This is foolishness. Stop it. I think it was the only thing he was afraid of. He wasn't afraid of anything else. He had lived through World War II.
It sounded like he was afraid.
He had been in a not a death camp, but a labor camp, a Nazi labor camp, forced labor camp during World War II. So he really wasn't afraid of too much, but he was afraid of that. And I think that's why he shut it down. He didn't want to accept that my mom and I were reading each other's minds.
A lot of people are still afraid of that.
Yes, which ties into the Salem witch trials, because it's still to this day, so many people are afraid of what they know. Probably they suspect to be true, but they don't want to admit it because God forbid somebody's reading your intentions, or can remote view where you're living or working, but all these things are possible. And so governments are afraid, whether it's a small, government in New England or a national government. These people are afraid of folks who have developed the ability to do these things. And it can be taught. That's the other thing that I think they fear. And, I think some organized religions are afraid of it too, because
absolutely.
So there's that resistance as well. But anyway.
I'm 6-7 weeks into a remote viewing class taught by Michelle Bogatz, and
oh, cool!
I can tell you, it's been very, very interesting. It's been surprising. Yeah. Erin, you have some experience with remote viewing as well?
I do. I taught myself back when I was maybe 20, maybe 21. I had sort of awoken to the abilities that I had, and I knew I could. So I had friends across the US and actually in England as well, and we would practice. And, certain times a day, purposely thinking, okay, so what is so-and-so doing, and trying to get an image, writing it down, and then conferring at the end of the day. So it's been something that I've practiced and worked on for a long time.
I think it's fascinating stuff. I know I interviewed Lynn Buchanan, who was one of the remote viewers for the military, for the Army under Stargate. He's one of those guys. And he does classes too. He lives in Alamogordo, New Mexico, and a very interesting place to live. But he was doing a lot of, he stopped doing the military stuff because he had a rather horrible incident where a young girl, I think it was one of Gaddafi's daughters, was killed as a result of his being able to know where Gaddafi was. And they did a bombing strike, and she was killed. He lived through it. Later he was killed, but And he told me that after that, he refused to do it anymore. And now he just tries to find missing children. That's what he does. He dedicates his remote viewing to that. So
I remember that airstrike, early 80s, was it?
I don't know exactly, but I just remember he told me that's when he said, I don't want to do that anymore. I don't want to be used for that. And that goes back to that fear that I said that, once you develop these high skills, you get the attention of people who want to use it for their gain, and not always for good purposes. Could be nefarious purposes, or, things that you don't want to be involved with, but you're not going to, probably know how you're being used. So
Right. Sounds
I
like
think it's,
responsibility levels jump
yeah,
up, not only for the people that are able to do this, but the ones who are aware of it and maybe are feeling the need to revise their own practices. Like if I'm afraid that somebody is watching me,
mhm,
then maybe I should be doing things that I am not afraid of people to see.
yeah,
It's a real paradigm shift when it comes to the realization that more and more people are able to do this.
yeah. And as I think we're undergoing a leap of consciousness right now. And it's not necessarily a leap of faith that we're usually used to hearing about. It's a leap of consciousness. And I know, Terry, you've talked a lot about consciousness and shifting consciousness, and that's basically the same idea, uh, what I call an era of reconversion, where we're going back to what we already knew, what ancient people knew, the world they lived in was much more connected to the universe and to the earth. And we're going back to that. And sometimes you got to go back to relearn, what we've lost in modern society. And I think science and technology is wonderful, but if we're not careful, it will take us into a future that we probably don't want. So we have to understand how we fit in organically into the universe, rather than just relying on science and technology, which, some people call it the oncoming technological apocalypse, or the singularity. And I'm quite frightened of that. Even when I was a little kid, people would say, "Oh, robots are becoming more human-like," and I always, from being a little kid, I always thought, I'm more afraid of humans becoming more robot-like. That we're going to lose our humanity. We're going to lose, who we are as natural people. And one example of that is, my mom was psychic, and she knew that I was too, and but I couldn't tell the teacher at school about it. I learned very quickly you can't do that. I think, Terry, you said you couldn't talk about your experiences when you were a kid, so you just have to keep it inside. And luckily, I never quite let go of it. I was able to play the game and not talk about these things. And then as I got older, I got the ability to learn more, and I kept experiencing stuff. And it wasn't until 4 years ago that I decided that I would, publish these paranormal books. And I think you had a similar kind of revelation.
We were on a parallel track, I tell you.
Yeah,
Ask you,
I'm nearing retirement, so I don't worry about, I'm a tenured professor, so I suppose they could get rid of me if they really tried really hard, but it would be pretty hard at this point. And but it seems like the college and my colleagues and the students are supportive of what I've been writing about, so I think the timing was right.
I do too. I don't think our books would have been nearly well received had we published them just 5 years earlier.
We could see Snark behind you when you moved your head.
Snark, yes, Snark is back there. Yeah.
Where do people go to get Snark?
You can go to my website, bruceolavsolheim.com. My middle name spelled O-L-A-V, last name SOLHEIM.com, bruceolavsolheim.com. And you can order the actual print comic book, the actual floppy comic book. And I'll even sign it. And I have a couple that are signed by the artist too, which makes them more valuable. And I can send those out. Or there's also, you can go to comixology.com, and it's a digital comic.
Oh, cool.
For Snark 2, it's going to be on Amazon. So, because it's a graphic novel.
Yeah.
Not a traditional
comic. When you go to look up Dr. Bruce, it's E before I in Solheim.
Yes, Solheim, yeah.
Yeah. Hey, let me ask you, as a historian,
Mhm.
don't you think that ancient people I mean, had a lot less distraction. You know, I mean, they had time to sleep out under the stars. They
Yeah.
had no television. They had no NFL, no, just a lot of the distractions that we have.
Yeah, no, it's a good point. You know, in America, during the founding of America, you know, in the colonial days, just before the revolution, it was not uncommon for a person, well, pretty much everybody lived, never ventured beyond 30 miles from their birthplace. Most people lived their entire lives in that little isolated area. And of course, they didn't have much connection to the rest of the world other than newspapers or somebody riding through, you know, on the difficult trails that they had, you know, wagon trails or whatever. So the world has become much more connected, which is nice in one way, but it also has led to an information overload. And I see that with my students. It's in the 30 years I've been teaching, it it's gotten to the point where they don't know how to discriminate what's thrown out there. It's become a real challenge, and more so every day, trying to figure out what's what. And when people talk about disinformation and misinformation, it's much more of a problem now, because it's usually the tricksters, the people who want to trick you, are going to make it easily digestible, you know, pre-chewed, you know, so you don't have to think. And they're just throw it out there, and they'll have a slogan, and that's how they get you hooked on their information for their dubious purposes. But back in the day, even when I started college, you went to the library, you looked at academic journals and books, and you had 3x5 cards, you wrote down all the information. That's how you did research. I haven't been it's sad to say, but I haven't been in a library in years. I do all the research online, but you know, I know what to look for, but for a lot of young people, they don't, you know, they don't know how to look up good information and trustworthy information. So they get a lot of the stuff that's pre-digested and gear, you know, it's basically propaganda. In fact, I tell them, you know, every day they're going to get propagandized by the media, by the government, by foreign governments, by entities, you know, by corporations. They're just going to get bombarded every day. And I tell them it's a really hard job to find out, well, what is really true. And some people just give up and just say, okay, I'll take one side and I'll believe whatever they tell me. And that's just makes their life, well, they think it makes their lives easier, until it takes them down a dead end into disaster, which, you know,
I'm sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off.
No, go ahead.
No, because what you said just resonated with a point with me, and I'll forget it if I don't bring it up. And that is that you're probably like me. I mean, when you were an undergrad, you didn't have a computer.
No.
Erin's much younger than we are, so I'm sure she had all the latest stuff. You had computers in undergrad.
Yeah, sure. I knew how to do word processing. I didn't know how much, you know, the internet and finding websites and stuff was pretty archaic back then. It was nothing in comparison to now. There were little chats you could do and things like that with people. But as a librarian previously, you know, now I'm working as a therapist, but as a librarian, my way of research and gaining information is much different than, as you said, you know, people are today. And that, you know, as you were speaking about the world being connected, in my head, that's humans are more connected. You know, the human world is more connected. We are connected as a group across the world. However, we are more disconnected from nature and you know, those things that could bring us back down and help us with those discernments. Yeah. And taking the time and sleeping under the stars and things that were done a long time ago, as Terry was talking about a little bit ago. You know, we've lost that.
There is a beauty to the simplicity, and you find a lot of people trying to you know, simplify and declutter their lives and go back to their roots. And I think that's and unplug, you know, or some people say get off the net, you know, because it is overwhelming. I mean, it can be completely overwhelming, and you start to lose your sense of reality. And technology is not slowing down. it's always above and beyond our ability to fully comprehend it morally, ethically, and legally, even, because it's just moving so fast. And then we have to try to catch up. Case in point being, at what point do you take somebody who you perceive as being irresponsible on social media and block them? At what point does that, okay, well, now we got issues of free speech, but then it's a private company. And so it's moved so fast that nobody's really figured out, well, they figured out how to use it, but they haven't quite figured out how to make it fair and equitable for everybody. So that's a point of contention right now. And the sense of when you're isolated, as we have been for the last year, people start to lose their compassion for other people. A lot of people do, and they just get isolated in an echo chamber, and they don't see the nuances that you see when we're all in a room together, and you say something, and you see somebody like get dejected because you hurt their feeling. You don't know that when you're online, necessarily. So I think people will get along a lot better if they understand each other. And technology has made it where it's just a sound bite and a tweet or whatever, and you don't see the repercussions of that in real time, in real life, with people being together. I see that with students. Their snappy emails or responses, like, instead of being polite, like saying dear professor, like the olden days, dear professor, I would never think of going up to my professor and not being polite to them when you had to face them, right? But in these emails and stuff, I've noticed over the years, it's, hey, why'd you give me a bad grade? This is not fair, and I'm thinking, where's the, start off with something like, and oftentimes I'll tell them, okay, here's a lesson for you. If you want something from somebody, you should be polite, especially somebody who has some type of authority over you. You have to understand that relationship, and you're not going to succeed if you approach your boss that way at work, or whoever's in authority, and not that I'm trying to lord over them, but I'm just trying to teach them a lesson. And oftentimes they thank me later because they didn't even know they were doing that. It's like, oh, I would never think of being rude to you. I didn't know that I was being rude. And I believe them when they say that. I think they just are so casual and rude in a way that they don't even know they're being rude. So it's like you have to help them understand that. And I think that is part of the part of the thing that makes us less human is the technology. We have to be very careful. And I know in your business, Erin, you're a therapist, so you're probably dealing with a lot of these folks who are, even though we're so connected, they're so isolated at the same time from that connection,
Right.
the real
Right.
connection.
Right. They don't feel that connection, and in fact they push it away,
Yeah.
and become so trapped in a circle in their mind where they're just stuck in a loop. And if there's a fallacy in their thinking, that loop is an illogical one, and it takes outside sources to show you that, are you sure that makes sense? Because I don't see it. And
Yeah.
it takes that outside reflection, and this kind of leads into the thoughts I was having a little bit ago when you said unplug from the net.
Mhm.
And this neural net of human communications that's going on. And and when you do that, you're not disconnected in a way, because now you can hear
Mhm.
the higher beings that are speaking to you, especially if you are psychic like we are, if you are
Mhm.
able to do that. And you don't even know that if you don't disconnect.
Yeah.
And that really brings us into Ansar and your work with Ansar, and
Mhm.
you're going out into nature and disconnecting on purpose so that you can receive these messages.
Can I
Yeah.
just interject real quick,
Yeah.
on the issue of your interaction with your students, don't you think the three of us, I mean, collectively, we naturally have uh, a level of civility. It's just a notch above. I mean,
Mhm.
I think we're naturally inclined to be patient and less, in someone's face. Like the example you gave, my mother taught me when I was young. She says, never insult anyone that's going to cut your hair, prepare your food, or give you medical care.
That's sound advice.
I thought so. I took it to heart. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. Especially in the olden days when you used to get a razor shave,
Yeah.
right next to the juggler, right, with the old straight razor. Got to be really nice to that person. But no, I mean, I think it's true. The example I give, and I want to go into the Anzar thing because you opened the door for Anzar there. And I got to let him walk through. But I tell my students, like when they were building the transcontinental, before they had the transcontinental, it would take up to 6 to 8 months to get a letter of communication from East Coast to West Coast. So, and I give them the example. I say, okay, what if you had somebody you were engaged to, but they had to go to San Francisco ahead of you, and you were in New York or Boston, and they're living on the West Coast now. It would take 6 to 8 months to get a letter to that person. So let's say they wanted to break up. It would take 6 to 8 months for that very important message to get to the person. This is before the transcontinental, right? A lot can happen in 6 to 8 months. The person that's counting on them getting married and they're coming to visit and they're going to get married or whatever, all of a sudden they find out that, oh, they've been waiting this whole time. Oh, well, they decided a month after they left that they were not going to get married. In fact, they found somebody else. They're already married, right? So then I said, now I hear about people breaking up within a matter of seconds, with a text message. People break up with text messages. So that, the transcontinental changed because lines of communication follow lines of transportation. So when they built the transcontinental, connected the two coasts, they also built the telegraph. So now you can get from East Coast to West Coast in less than a week instead of 6 to 8 months, and you can get your information across faster. And now we're to the ridiculous level where we're within split seconds, you're getting information across the world. And so that's an adjustment that people have to come to. They expect that speed of which causes you to not appreciate things like Anzar. Right now, I'll let Anzar in through the door.
Please.
So to
Yes.
to communicate with the deceased, or I should preface this. I think my theory is, and it's not just my theory, there are physicists who believe this too, and many who dabble in this stuff, is that the alien world, the spirit world, and the quantum world are all really the same thing. It's the same realm they're operating in. So, like for instance, if a ghost pops in, people who have seen a ghost, they pop in out of nowhere, they pop out again. They go through doors, windows, ceilings, whatever. People who have had engagements with non-human entities like aliens, they pop in out of nowhere and then they pop out, and sometimes they take you with them, and you go through windows, you go through ceilings, you go through solid objects. And so the quantum world is the subatomic world, where all the things that we see, the way we see the world is not the way it really is. In the quantum world, everything is connected from here to Jupiter or beyond. Everything is connected, like one big soup, and everything affects everything else. And things operate much differently than what we see, the reality we've connected to. So when you slow down and you start to see the world as it really is, when you get into a meditative state, I forgot what brainwave state it is. I'm sure Erin knows, but whatever the beta, is it?
I think it's theta.
Theta. Okay. When you get in that meditative state, however you do it, whether you're tush on a cushion, or you're, in my case, walking meditation, you can get yourself into a meditative state where you can hear the signal line that you don't hear, that's drowned out by all the everyday life reality that we have. And once you do that, it's pretty amazing what starts to happen. And at first, when you start doing it, at least in my case, when I started really practicing it, rather than just having these paranormal things happen randomly and frequently, I was able to manage it by having these meditative walks, and provide security for myself, protection, which I'm sure Erin would say the first thing you need to do is learn how to protect yourself when you open up, because there's a lot of things that can happen. I was able to make connections with those that have passed on. So, but also this entity named Anzar. Now, Anzar, I have a long history with Anzar, and it's come through a couple of different sources. One is my own memories that I have. Some has come through my contact with Yvonne and retrieved memories. So my conscious memories, my subconscious memories, and experiences that I've written down, you know.
And Yvonne is the hypnotherapist, for those who may not know.
Yeah.
So you've been hypnotically regressed to help pull those things from your subconscious into your conscious mind.
Yeah. And I know a lot of people have a problem with that. They say, oh, well, just people get, you know, the hypnotist puts ideas in their mind and implants all this stuff. But if you see how Yvonne works, she does not do that. She coaxes it out of you, but she doesn't plant it in your mind. So it's you, and you're in control the whole time anyway. But anyway, so all these experiences that I've had have been partly, you know, through all those methods, plus some archival stuff where I've written my experiences down after they happen. Well, in the case of Anzar, my history with him goes back to 1964 that I've discovered. I didn't know him as Anzar then. I just know I had an experience, a very traumatic experience, where an alien entity intervened to protect me from being molested by a child molester who lived in a house above our house. And he came in and, as he says, put up a protective shield. And I remember he showed me a ship, you know, like a holographic image of a ship. And there were other kids that he had saved too. So he intervened. And he convinced, you know, I was able, well, I think he did it too, convinced my mother that I shouldn't go up to that house, because I'd been up there and they had babysat me a few times, but nothing happened. I have conscious memories of what was going on in that house. But because you're 6 years old, I was 6 years old. I didn't know. I just knew the man was acting weird. He was like an adult and he looked normal, right? I mean, most child molesters do look normal. They don't look like hideous monsters. You know, they look like the guy next door, right? Or the lady next door, whatever. And, but he was doing things like saying, okay, let's play a game. He was acting like a kid. And that's very suspicious. You know, it's one thing when grandpa's fooling around, you know, making Legos with the kids. And there's another thing when he's acting like a fool, not like an adult. And he said, let's play hide and seek. And he'd go hide in a closet. And he would wait in that dark closet. And then we'd have to come and find him. And then when you found him, you'd have to stay in the dark closet with him. And I learned very quickly that I don't want to go in that closet because I don't trust this guy. Even though I was only 6, I knew there was something wrong. And he also gave us little Dixie cups filled with a liquid that he said was Kool-Aid, but I smelled it and it smelled like the adult beverages my parents would have, you know, when they had parties. So I knew not to drink it. I'm still suspicious of people giving me a drink. You know, oh, here's some punch. Well, is it alcohol? Oh, you know, I don't drink it. I usually don't. I was conditioned, you know, that wasn't what you did. So I already knew that something was wrong, but then Anzar appeared in my life, although he wasn't called Anzar then. I just knew him as a very tall, very scary looking being, you know, in a robe with slanted eyes, you know, big slanted eyes, and a teardrop shaped head. And he said that sometimes what looks scary is actually good, and what doesn't look scary is bad. So don't, you know, basically don't judge a book by its cover. Mm-hmm. He said, that guy is very bad and you should not go up there anymore. And I'm not going to allow you to go up there anymore. And so that was an intervention, saved me from that, what would have been a horrible experience. And I shudder to think how many kids were not protected and fell victim to that. Later, I found out that he was arrested for being a child molester. So, and I think he's dead now, as far as I know, the checking that I did.
So when Anzar came to you, can you explain, like, how, you know, you said that he showed you, you know, the projection of the ship, but were you sleeping, awake? How do you remember that actual event happening?
Well, it was in the backyard, and I was able to look through my window in my bedroom into the backyard. And in the backyard, above that backyard, above on the hill, was the house where that child molester guy lived. So when I was looking out into the backyard, that's where I was able to see in my mind's eye what was going on. I saw Anzar, I saw the ship that it was a golden ship, I remember, and it didn't have any, like the interior was very organic, it was like there weren't any, like in a fighter jet, with all these controls and gauges and stuff. It was all very smooth and organic and was very warm and, kind of golden, that's how it appeared to me. And so, this is what I remember from 1964, and also what I remember, and also some of it is what came out in the hypnotic regression with Yvonne. And then the next contact I had with, and he didn't call himself Anzar then, so I just knew he was this tall dude. And as evidence, and I know when you talk about contactees and experiencers, they have usually physical effects based on that contact. And I did. For the next 3 years, I had trouble speaking. So I had to go to speech therapy from age 6 to age 9. I remember I had to go to speech therapy because I couldn't get words out. It was the worst kind of stammering or stuttering that you can imagine. And you can hear me now. I mean, I just talk, I flow, I mean, I talk for a living, right? I would have never imagined that when I was a kid. I was so afraid to speak. I was so afraid to make a mistake, to stutter, and people would tease you. So for 3 years, I had to go through speech therapy until finally I was able to overcome it.
When did you realize that you were dealing with a non-human entity, or did you realize that?
I don't think I did not fully realize what was going on, because since age 4, I had been living in a very strange world of seeing, ghosts and invisible playmates and stuff. So I didn't know the full impact of it, although I was very interested in space, especially after then. But then again, a lot of little kids at that time were, because of NASA and, the Gemini program, eventually the Apollo program, the moonshot, all that stuff. So, but I was especially interested. And so that where Anzar really comes back into the picture is 1997, so much later. By that time, I've already had other experiences, not necessarily with him. But in 97, I had a not just a lucid dream, it was a vision. I was awake. And this one, after it happened, I wrote it down. I even drew a picture of him. He didn't call himself Anzar then, he called himself the progenitor, which means the first, the one who initiates, the one who starts everything off, and the original contact here on Earth. And that's what he said he was. And he spoke in almost Zen-like terms, and I wrote down every word he said. And he talked about cosmology, how, a black hole explodes into a quasar in another dimension and another universe. And that's how things pass through. And he was explaining all this stuff that was, I hadn't studied astrophysics or any of that stuff. So a lot of it was over my head, but I wrote down everything. And that was in 97, but I kept it to myself. By that time I'd been teaching for a while. I'd worked at Boeing. I'd been in the military. So I knew better than to start telling people, hey, I just saw this, this progenitor guy, and here's a picture of him, that I drew of him. And he kind of looked proto-human at that point. And still a robe, but proto-human looking. And I finally broke my silence in 2000. It was a friend of mine who since passed away. She was an anthropology professor. And I said, she was into ritual magic and stuff. So I said, oh, she'll be, think this is pretty cool. Or I thought she was safe to talk about it. And I mentioned it to her and I showed her the picture I'd drawn. And she looked at it and she read some of what I had written. And she said, you're a pretty spacey dude, Bruce. And I thought, here's a person who I thought, who was practicing ritual magic, and she seemed to be into the paranormal. I thought she would accept this, but no, she didn't. So I kind of backed off and I thought, I'm not going to mention this again. And it wasn't until my friend Gene died in 2016 that prompted me to write the first Timeless book and start on that journey, that and then meeting you, that I reintroduced myself during the spirit walks to Anzar. to the progenitor. That's who I first, when I got my protection, was on my spirit walk, I said, I'd like to speak to the progenitor. And then he came to me and I said, by the way, since we've known each other for a while, what's your name? So I asked him and he said his name was Anzar. And I remember I told Terry, not long, I remember Terry, and you said you looked it up and you found all these meanings and how it was tied into the Basque people and all. It was, and in the Middle East, there's a town in Iran called a Persian town where the Azeri people live. It's called Anzar. There's an Anzar high school in up in Central California or Northern California. Anyway, so
history there. There really is a long, deep history there.
There is, yeah. In I think it's in Morocco. That's the god of water and rain and stuff. So there's this ancient connection. But anyway, that's how I got acquainted with Anzar, and from that point on, I just started connecting with him and asking him stuff, and he would tell me things and give me wisdom, and it seemed like we had a really good rapport, and I shared a lot of that with Terry, and I didn't write about him until the second book, and it was really the last story of the second book because I was testing the waters, and I think Terry knows what I mean, and you too, Erin. You kind of want to test the waters a little bit, see how people react. And then the second book I went a little bit further, and then the third book I just let it all hang out, right? It's a lot of Anzar in the third book, and then he's going to have his own book, so that's as far as you can go. But he was very helpful in preparing me. He always said it, I asked him what's going to happen, because that's what we want to know, what's going to happen in the future, right? And his thing is, I can give you some information, but realize there's a lot of variables. It's not like this is absolutely going to happen, but there's a good chance this will happen. And he said, predictions are often wrong, but preparation is never wrong. So he instructed me to prepare, and I shared a lot of that with Terry. So, Terry is you're very intuitive too. And we came up with this February thing, February of last year. And of course, that's when all this went down with COVID. So I think both of us were pretty well prepared.
Well, thankfully, on your advice, I was well prepared.
Well, Anzar's advice. I don't take credit.
Yeah, because in February of this year, Dallas was struck with an ice storm and sub-zero temperatures that no one was prepared for. But I happened to have food, water, firewood, everything that I needed, that my family was, inconvenienced, but certainly not to the level that a lot of other poor people who suffered broken pipes and homelessness from it.
Yeah, and another thing about I've been communicating with him for almost 3 years now, or 2.5 years, whatever it is. And an interesting thing happened at a CIRO meeting, the Close Encounter Resource Organization. And I think it was in Orange County, the meeting. And we have a mutual friend, Lucinda, who was at the meeting. And I instructed Anzar, I asked Anzar, I'm going to go to the meeting today, and can you please make yourself visible to somebody so I could get some confirmation. How we're always looking for confirmation, weird things happen, strange things happen. We believe it, but still we want confirmation, right? We want somebody to,
absolutely.
I want somebody else to see it too. So, because there's always that little bit in your mind, like, man, I hope, you just that little lingering doubt, right? You don't want any of that lingering doubt. So I said, can you appear? And it was at a CIRO meeting. And at the end of it, I asked anybody, did anybody see anybody with me? And one lady said, well, I see 2 people, but she described them, and they were actually my spirit guides. I have 2 spirit guides that help me and protect me. Theodora, who's kind of an angelic female entity, and Ozzy, who is he doesn't talk, he's the bouncer. He's the guy that protects me when I'm communicating with the spirit world or the alien world. And but she didn't see Anzar, so I was kind of disappointed. And then Lucinda said, hey, come here. And then she said, who is that big guy standing behind you? And I said, can you describe him? And she said, well, he was like 7 feet tall. He was kind of looked like a southwestern Indian Kachina doll, kind of. And I said, kind of like proto-human looking. Yeah. I said, that's my ancient alien mystic contact. That's Anzar. And she looked at me and Anzar, and she like kind of freaked out, and she took out her wallet and she showed me she's since moved, but anyway, she took out her wallet and showed me her driver's license. She lived on Via de Anzar. That was the name of her street, Via de Anzar, spelled exactly the same way. And so that's the confirmation I got. And
Pretty strong confirmation, I'd say.
it was mind blowing. And then I talked to her more. Talk to her is like I was interrogating her. Terry, you know what I mean? I was like, I was so interested. I was probably bugging her, calling her, hey, And she told me, he's for you. He's not, I saw him to help you with the confirmation, which people appear and help us in ways that we don't even expect to. And she told me this is a process of integration. She said, Anzar is part who you are, and not in this dimension, or whatever. And you are attached to him. And she said, talked about the integration. So I talked to Anzar about that. What is this integration? And he said, well, yeah, that's, you can integrate to make the connection even stronger. And I was afraid that integration would mean I would, check out and I'd die and, leave my family behind, all my friends behind. And he said, no, that's not what it is. It's just bringing you closer, bringing us closer. And I said, am I related to you? And he says, yeah, we are related. And so he's an ancient alien mystic who lives in that alien spirit quantum world. Whether he's actually, I don't think he's flesh and blood, but he is connected to me and I get information from him. He enhances my life. I share that information with others. So that's the story of Anzar. And in the book, like I said, it's based on this research paper that I either did for MUFON or for Ray Hernandez. I can't remember who I did it for now, but anyway, that research is in there that frames this whole story of Anzar and all the communication, because I keep a detailed spirit journal from every spirit walk that I take. I record it as it's happening, and then I come back and transcribe it. And I have like 300 pages of notes from the last 3 years from all that.
I was privileged to read that paper, and I can tell you it's a scholarly work that's easily understood, but it's full of revelations. It really is.
I think so, and I owe it to the, like I start the book by saying I'm not special. I just have a special connection to somebody who is very special, and I've been privileged and honored to have that connection. And I can't just keep it to myself or use it, for some, like, oh, I'm going to play the stock market. I'm going to make billions of dollars, because Anzar is going to help me. It's become very clear to me that that's not what it's about. I'm supposed to help people. And he's, one of the things he always tells me, which I know probably a lot of people have heard, but he reminds me, is that in order to be at peace, you have to keep love in your heart and always operate from a position of love. And it seems so simple, right? But how many times a day do we get angry at somebody, and that anger can then be, become malignant, and we could end up doing things that we don't really mean to do or say things we don't mean. But if you always come back to the keeping love in your heart, it doesn't mean you're a pushover or that you're going to let people step all over you. It just means that you're going to have, because there's tough love too, as we know as parents, whether we're pet parents or people parents, whatever, there's tough love too. So that love is very powerful, and it is the most powerful thing. And those are just some of the things. And that's kind of in a nutshell, the Anzar story.
It's a great story. And Erin, as a therapist, I bet you see that sometimes people misinterpret your kindness for weakness. Would you say that?
All the time. I think so, but and it isn't being a pushover. It is staying in that heart center and just accepting everybody as who they are, where they're at, and even if I am insulted or there's a jab, like, well, I understand where you're coming from, and I know that you've been hurt a lot in the past, but you know, I still accept you, even though you're calling me names right now. It's okay.
Mhm.
It's okay. And that can bridge into my family life as well. And I think that is really where we're being called to
Mhm.
do, is just staying there within our heart. Um, you know, when you talk about Anzar being a part of you and you being a
Mhm.
part of him, it very much resonates with what I have been told by my own ET encounters, that there are many, many different parts of us, and we live in many, many different
Mhm.
places and space-time locations and dimensions and worlds and times even on this planet. You know, our next guest for next week is going to be doing past lives, but in my own understanding of the way things work, past life is a misnomer. Everything's happening now, and we have
Mhm.
connections with all of these different parts of ourselves. And it sounds like Anzar is another iteration, that's
Mhm.
kind of the word I use, of you.
Mhm.
And you
I
have
think
that
that's very
strong bond
much
and connection. I think that's wonderful.
I think that's very much true, and that's what Lucinda has told. Lucinda is very tuned in and intuitive, and she's in kind of a Native American tradition. I'm not sure if you've met her, Erin, but Terry
I have
knows her well.
not yet,
Yeah,
anyways.
she's a very very good person, good-hearted,
Sure is.
very funny person, great sense of humor too. She's got a great laugh, you know, which is what we need every day. We need some of those kind of people in our lives because everything is so serious. And but yeah, no, I think you're very much. I think that's right. And uh, we don't know how many different versions of us are in existence. It could be an infinite number of us. And I have asked my spirit friends, those that have passed on, and I've asked Anzar about that. And the 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 impression I get is very much what you said, that there's so many different versions of us or different realities going on at the same time that really have nothing to do with the linear time that we're taught, you know, from point A to point B. And that's what Gene, my friend Gene, I didn't talk about Gene other than he was the one who inspired me to write Timeless. One of the first things I asked him when I first saw him after he passed away, and he was a childhood friend. We grew up together in the Norwegian American community. His parents were well, his dad was an immigrant and from Norway, came over on the boat with my parents, you know, in 1948. So we were close friends from little, you know, until he passed away 4 5 years ago. And a month after he died, he came to me and told me, uh, you know, he said hello, and I was very shocked because I mean I'd had experiences with those that have passed on before, you know, ghosts and you know images of people and their voices and stuff. So that wasn't unusual, but he had a special purpose. I could visualize him in my vision. I could see him and I could hear him like we were talking. And the first thing I asked him, without even thinking, I just kind of said, "Hey, what's it like to be dead?" And he started laughing. He had a great sense of humor. And he said, "I don't feel like I'm dead. I mean," he said, "if I was dead, would I be talking to you? Would we be having this conversation?" I said, "You're right. That was a stupid question. You know, I've had experiences. I know, you know, you're just in another place, you know, another time or another dimension or whatever." And he said, "Yeah, the best way I can describe it is that there's no past, there's no future. It's just the eternal now." He said, "That's it." And he says, "I'm totally at peace. I'm totally happy." And he said, "It's time for you to write your stories. Don't be afraid." And he gave me the title. He said, "You should call it Timeless because we are all timeless. There is no end to us." And that was a big lesson for me because you know a lot of people fear death. I was no different, especially after my parents died. And I knew that there was something beyond that because I had spoken to dead people before, but I didn't investigate it enough. And with Gene, I found an outlet to do that, a way to do that. So I communicate with him every time I communicate with Anzar. Um, and there's other entities that I communicate with too, but just a few chosen ones. I don't want to get overwhelmed by too many people, but and if people request it, you know, I have people that request, "Can you get in touch with this person?" And I'll do it not for money, just because I'm friends or whatever with them. Gene also told me, I asked him about aliens, and he said, we are the aliens. That's what he told me. We are the aliens. And I said, what does that mean? Does that mean like you, where you are, or am I, or all of us? And he said, all of us. We are the aliens. And so what I understood that to mean is that we're all connected. So even the strange experiences that I know Terry's story a little bit more than your story, Erin, but the insectoid, Dr. Bug, as we like to call him, the tall grays, all these the reptilian that I had an encounter with. We're all related. We're all from the same one consciousness, Now, who knows how long ago or in whatever dimension or whatever that we took these different forms. So we are the aliens, we are, all of us are. We're all connected. And that was kind of scary and comforting at the same time. So that's why I call my abduction experiences reunions, not because they're not scary. And I know Terry's was especially traumatic, and I think they're traumatic for everybody, but I've come to realize that it's a reunion with those that we are connected to. And that's part of this awakening, or part of this leap of consciousness that we're going through, is we're starting to realize that. And Anzar is preparing me and helping me prepare others for that realization. And that's going to be a startling realization for especially a lot of religious folks it's going to be very difficult for them to accept it. The very practical types, to believe, to take that leap it's more than a leap of faith. It's a leap of consciousness. It's a leap of understanding how we're all connected. And it's going to be a rough transition, though. That's for sure.
Yes.
And we see that already with the UFO stuff, the release of the information by the military. Governments, the basic organizing principle of any government is for war, or preparation for war. It's a sad but true statement. And the military always has a voice. And I know that the military would like to find some advantage with this technology, and they already have part of it, or partly understand, just enough to make them dangerous, I think, with it. And what I've been told is that this technology, the Tic Tac fighter or whatever that people saw, the Navy guys saw, that technology cannot be used to harm anybody. And I don't think there's been any, like kill somebody. Now, they could accidentally harm you, I suppose, but not on purpose. And so any governments that are trying to strap a bomb on something, on a spacecraft or something, it's going to backfire them. It's not going to work. And there's been examples of where nuclear devices have been, nuclear missiles have been neutralized, where there was some threat of them being launched or used. So
there's at least 2 examples of launch control panels going offline. All 10 missiles going offline, both in the United States and the former Soviet Union.
Yep.
So
they're helping us in this evolution that we're going through, this evolution of consciousness, this leap of consciousness that they're trying to help us. Now, not all of them are that friendly. Some of them are pretty rough and tough. And when I think about it, of the alien types that we're really related to, but distantly, I look at it from a historical point of view. I look at, well, when people came to the New World, when they came to the Americas, who came? Well, there were conquistadors who obviously weren't very nice. There were merchants, there were missionaries, there were, adventurers, fur trappers, whatever, gold seekers, all these different people with these different motivations. So could it be that our ancient relatives that are coming back or coming to us all have they might have different motivations. So one person's contact might be quite pleasant, another person's might be quite traumatic. Both are not lying, they're telling the truth, but they have very different experiences.
I think, Erin, you might agree with me. I've come to the place where I was injured in my abduction, but I think it was collateral damage. I don't think that they were intentionally malicious. I don't think it was a torture session. I think it had a clinical medical vibe to it. Erin, and I know you're kind of similarly situated. What's your opinion?
Right. Right. Yeah. I see the, I usually describe it as there's three different kinds of experiences I've had. There's been the absolutely loving and kind and just awe-inspiring experiences I've had with the different entities. There's ones that were scary, medical, but not bad. I was just frightened and probably traumatized, especially as a young child. And then I have the ones where the humans have been involved, possibly military, and those are absolutely terrifying. But I think it's more of the paradigm of understanding that not all humans have compassion like I would like them to have, and yeah. So I mean, I can parcel it out, but most of my experience, those scary, have been beneficial to me in some manner. So yeah.
Dr. Bruce, could I ask you? Um, I'm sorry, Erin, did I cut you off?
No, you're good.
All right, let me ask you. This is a little bit off track, going from non-human to human entities. But one of the most fascinating stories that you tell, and I'm not sure that this made it into Timeless 2. Maybe it did. My memory's failing me. But anyway, there's a story about, I know that you had a television producer interested in your story and interested in demonstrating your abilities.
Yeah.
And you went to Chicago.
Yeah.
Could you tell I think the audience would love to hear this story.
It's a good one. It's a cautionary tale, a classic cautionary tale of hubris, overweening pride, right? So after a coast to coast thing, which I know you've been on coast to coast several times, I was contacted by a TV producer, and I know you've been contacted, probably both of you have been contacted by TV producers. And, some of them are kind of slimy and some of them are probably, they're probably decent people, just want to make a living. Well, this guy, I didn't know. He just said, hey, I think you're the real deal. I want to bring you out to Chicago. I'll pay for you to come out, fly you out, stay in a hotel, pay for food or whatever. And I said, okay. And I said, well, I want to bring Ginger, my wife, with me. And he said, okay, that's fine. I didn't want to go by myself because I didn't know who this guy was, or what was going on. So they bring me out to Chicago. And the concept was that he was going to mic me up and film me in different locations around Chicago and north of Chicago and, in that area. And at these different places where something significant has happened, something paranormal or activity had happened there, or something traumatic had happened there. So I said, that'd be cool. And of course, I wanted desperately to impress this guy, because, hey, it's my moment to shine, I'm going to show what I can do. So he took me to a couple of places and they were pretty tame, like a graveyard on an old country road and an old haunted building. I knew it was haunted right away just by looking at it. And I picked up on some things and he verified, yes, that's what happened there. I had no idea where we were. In the graveyard, I had a funny experience where I heard one of the dead in the graveyard. I complained to the producer, the TV producer. I said, because it was like -5. It was January in Chicago, in the suburbs or the area around it. Yeah, -5 degrees. It was January 2019. And I said, man, it is really, really cold. It is really cold, bitterly cold. And I heard this voice coming from the graveyard there saying, you think this is cold? Try being dead. The voice said. And I thought, that is so funny. This guy obviously had a sense of humor. And it wasn't the producer. It was, I was picking up on a signal line from one of the folks in the graveyard. So anyway, it was pretty funny. It was nice. And then he took me to the south side of Chicago. And we parked in an Aldi's parking lot. And there was an old post office across the street. There was an those elevated tracks, whatever. And there was an alleyway between them. And so he said, okay, I'll mic you up. He's having trouble with his camera, so he didn't have his camera working yet, but I'll mic you up and just go out and see what you start, report what you see or feel. So I got out of the car and I put up my radar dish, and I didn't do my normal protection. And this is part of the cautionary thing. Always do protection, especially if you're in an area you don't know what's going on there. The only thing he told me was that something dark had happened there. That should have been a clue. I was trying so desperately to impress this guy, because I hadn't particularly impressed him that much. Or, and he was voicing his displeasure. It's like, well, you're not picking up as much as this last guy. And I thought, oh, I really got to amp it up now. So I got out of the car. I was determined. I put the biggest radar dish I could imagine above my head. And instantly I picked up like it was the 1890s, and there was horses and buggies and people in dark clothing. They were rushing around back and forth. And it was all very, a lot of kinetic, a lot of movement. But there was one guy, and none of them were paying attention to me. It's like I was looking at an old black and white film, right? And then this is in my mind's eye, right? And then, but there was one guy in front of me standing still, staring at me. He obviously knew I was there, and he was acknowledging me, and he was just standing there staring at me. And he had very dark, scary eyes, one of those big curly mustaches, a bowler hat, and a dark overcoat on it. He was just staring at me. And it gave me the creeps, but then it went away. The scene went away. So I thought, okay, I got to pick up on the signal line again. So I started walking into the alleyway. I went to an old tree that was in this alleyway. And oftentimes I like to touch old things to see if I can pick up on something, to the residual energy or memory or whatever. And I was just about to touch this tree when all of a sudden I was driven into the ground. And what I mean by driven, it's like an NFL linebacker jumped on top of me and tackled me to the ground. And I injured my knee, hyperextended my left toe, and I was being held down. Well, there was nobody there. But I'm 6'3", about 265. I'm a big guy. It takes a lot to take me down onto the ground. And the worst part, other than being injured, was that I couldn't get up. And it wasn't because I physically couldn't get up. I just started to give up. I started to give up my will to live. And as I did that, I started to see under the ground hundreds of people, men, women, and children, being tortured, being killed, being dismembered. And they were reaching out to me in agony, like grasping for me, trying to pull me down with them. Just they're in this horrible, tormented state in these dungeons under the ground. It was terrible. And finally I was able to, and I was saying this on my microphone the whole time while this was going on. And the camera still wasn't working. So he was trying to rush out to me to check on me. And finally I was able to get up. And I felt this vibration all through my body. It was like I was able to walk away, but I had been physically attacked, not just psychically attacked, but physically attacked. I thought it had something to do with this dude that I saw, that was staring at me. So I went back to the car, and he didn't have his camera ready yet. And I said, we got to get out of here. I said, this is terrible. And he said, you know what? I don't feel right either. I feel like I'm vibrating all through my body, like I'm going to have a heart attack. I said, yeah, let's get out of here. So we got back in his car and we drove away. And I said, what is this place? All you told me was that it was a dark place. What was this place? And he said, this was the site of the murder hotel. In the 1890s, Dr. H.H. Holmes built this hotel for the express purpose of capturing and torturing people. He killed maybe up to 300 people in this hotel that had secret underground chambers where he asphyxiated people, dismembered them, killed them, slowly tortured them. And that was the site. That was where it happened. And I said, don't ever take me to a place like that again. I'll go to a graveyard, I'll do whatever, but don't take me to a place like that ever again. I felt like I was bushwhacked, like I was ambushed psychically and physically. And even after that, when I returned home in my paranormal class, students of mine who were very psychic were getting physically ill when I came into the class. And they said, I'm sorry, Dr. Solheim, I got to leave. And they went outside, and I followed them to check on them. And I said, what's wrong? And they said, you have some really negative energy attached to you. I'm sorry, but I feel like I got to leave, And I said, I know, I don't feel right since I got home. And I did some research on H.H. Holmes, who I didn't really know about, which was kind of interesting. I didn't know about him, but I didn't. And the first thing that came up when I went into my search in the computer was a picture of H.H. Holmes. And that was the guy that I saw when I got out of the car. The guy in the bowler hat, with the curly mustache. And if you look up a picture of him, and any of the your audience members who look it up, it's a very haunting picture. You can just tell that there's something wrong with this guy. It's just, you know when you look at them. So anyway, I eventually had to get a spirit cleansing from a shaman, a Peruvian shaman lady that I know, and that got rid of that residual energy. So what it was, I think it was H.H. Holmes or whatever demonic entity that had entered him that caused him to do all these things, or some combination of it. And as we were driving away, I remember as we were driving away, the producer said, "Look around here in this neighborhood. What do you see?" And I said, "I see a lot of poor people, run down neighborhoods." And he said, "Well, look at them closely." And I said, "They all look like they're being oppressed, like they they're not smiling, they don't look happy, they don't, and he said they have no idea what happened here, because there's no markers, there's no, there's nothing to indicate that that's what had happened there." And he said that's the kind of residual energy that resides in these places. And I mean, I had been psychically attacked before, but I had never been physically attacked. That was a whole other level. And it's a cautionary tale, because you can't let your pride get in the way. You should always put up protection. If I would have had protection up, that wouldn't have happened. I might have still been psychically attacked and I could have repelled it, but I wouldn't have been physically attacked. I wouldn't have been so open, foolishly and, attacked like that. So, when I watch these paranormal shows with my son, we like to watch the paranormal shows, and I see them go into these places where there've been sightings of demonic entities. I go, I don't want anything to do with that. I know they exist. I know that they're terrible. I'm not going to put myself in that situation. I'm way too sensitive. I don't want to have to put all that energy up just to go in there to prove what I already know. I know that they exist. I know they can hurt you. I know they can hurt you in more ways than you can think. Why would I put myself in that situation? So I've turned down anybody who's saying, "Hey, you should go check out this place. It's got a demon in it." Good, great. I'm steering clear of that place. So anyway, that's what happened in the south side of Chicago.
Wow. Kind of validates good and evil. Both exist.
Yeah, and I've worked, and I know you were a prosecutor and an attorney general. I've worked with mass murderers before. I've guarded them. In fact, one guy on death row. And the one thing that I noticed about every single mass, maybe not mass, but multiple murder guy,
Yeah.
they all had demonic tattoos. Every single one of them.
Whoa.
I don't think it's automatic, like you get a demonic tattoo that you become a murderer. But all the murderers that I guarded did have demonic tattoos. So it's like they've been marked by something evil, and it's now part of who they are, part of their soul. And so that's something I noticed working in prisons that was very frightening. And I know, Terry, you've probably been seen eye to eye with some of these people, these very evil people. And when you look in their eyes, I remember this when I was a guard, because I had to do strip searches, and it's a horrible thing. I hate strip searches, but anyway, it's necessary to be safe in a prison. You look at these people in their eyes, and unlike when we look at each other, we see compassion, we see a spark of humanity. I see nothing. It's like an empty well, a deep, dark, empty well. There's no bottom to it. And it puts a chill into you. And of course, as a professional, whether you're a guard or a prosecutor, you can't let that get to you. You can't show the fear, because once you show the fear, they glom onto you.
Erin, I bet you can weigh in on this. I'll just very, very briefly, I got to tell you, the scariest, I mean, I've, represented and prosecuted killers, and I did 2 years of nothing but prosecuting sex crimes. And so I've seen a lot of really ugly things. The scariest person I've ever met was 12 years old. And I met him at juvenile detention, and judge had appointed me personally. He said, "I want you representing this kid." Like, all right, whatever you say, Judge. So I met this kid in juvenile lockup. They brought him in handcuffed in belly chains and sat him down, and he just looked like a normal kid.
Right.
And I asked the guard, I said, "Well, will you excuse us? I want to speak with my client." And he says, "I can't." He said, kid can't be alone with anybody. And, I wanted to object to that, but, this wasn't the time. So um, I won't go into what the kid had done, but it wasn't one thing, it was many things.
Right.
Including real quick, he cut a hole in the kitchen floor right in front of the sink with an axe that left, about an 8-foot drop straight down, and covered it up with a rug for his mother to step into, and hooked up 120 volt electricity to a couple doorknobs, and it gets much worse from there. So I'll stop there. But this kid scared me because after the initial greeting and the hi, how you doing, shake his hand, I'm here to help you. It's like the mask came down, and I was genuinely afraid of this kid. He was the scariest human being I ever spent time with in a room. And so, yeah, evil's out there. You've seen evil, haven't you, Erin?
Oh yeah. Oh yeah, I have. And it does have to do with that shifting of, putting on a mask and being okay. And then in the case that I'm thinking, the one person that I don't think I've ever felt cold like I felt. It's like all the blood drained out of my body. I just cold to my center, immediate cotton mouth. It was a young woman. I was just an intern at the time, and we were just trying to assess what was up with her. And but she went from being very sweet to very verbally aggressive like that. And she was almost a different person. And nobody agreed with me that she had multiple personalities, but it very well could have been a possession of some sort. But it was terrifying.
Yeah.
Just that shift and change. And I don't know if that comes from being empathic and being able to feel people and their emotions and their energies and then have it shift and change. I don't know. But I've also run across people that just have there is no spark in the eyes, and yeah, it's very uncomfortable. It's very uncomfortable.
Yeah, the worst place I worked in the prison system was a maximum security prison, the psychiatric ward, so criminally insane people. And the nurses were not allowed to go unaccompanied when they went on their rounds. So one of the guards would always have to be with them. So we were going around, and there was this one cell, and I had heard about this guy. He had this was in the state of Minnesota, multiple murderers. He was an insane outlaw biker guy. So very scary looking guy. Looked at his picture, just frightening, tattoos everywhere, his face everywhere. So I went in to do a health and welfare check, skin check. You look for skin and movement, that's what you do. So I have my flashlight in, I'm looking through the bulletproof glass, looking through there. I don't see him. I don't see any skin. The nurse is going, is he in there? And I said, I don't know. And so I put my face right next to the glass, looking really closely in there. And the guy was hiding behind the door, and he jumped up and started pounding on the glass and said, I'm going to kill every, blah, blah, blah. And I jumped probably 3 feet in the air, and the nurse was laughing at me. And she said, I'm sorry, but your reaction was very funny. And I said, well, my heart's beating out of my chest, and I said, that guy really scared. And then he was just running around in there and doing crazy things. And yeah, the criminally insane are very, even when when they got the Thorazine shuffle going.
Yes.
At any moment, they're fine until they're not. They can just like that. And, and that's most convicts can do that too, that you guard, they can flip that switch really quick. But the criminally insane, there doesn't have to be any, perceived grievance or disrespect that you show them or anything. It's a chemical thing, the switch that goes off. And so that it was the most difficult job. And just to end that story about the prisons, I had a couple of prisoners tell me they do have honest moments, and every once in a while, I try to be nice, a civil person. I know it's tough for them, it's tough for me being there, So they'll say, a couple of them told me, you know what, Solheim, they said, you shouldn't be working here. You know, this is not a good place for you to work. They were honest. They were honest at that moment. They were being honest. They knew what this place was. And I wasn't like a typical guard. You know, like Erin was saying, very intuitive, very sensitive.
Empathetic.
I was not the right play, and it wasn't. I mean, it was a 3-year stint where I worked in prisons, and I learned a lot. I learned about what human beings are capable of, and but it was. I'm glad I'm out. I'm glad that you know, that's. It was a terrifying experience, and but I'm glad I had the experience. But you know, it's kind of like the military. I'm glad I had the military experience, but I'm glad I'm out.
I can relate. Oh, so what's it like to see ghosts? You know, I've seen all these ghost shows. I've never had. I've seen aliens. I've seen UFOs, but I've never seen a ghost. And I think there's probably a thread of commonality that runs through all of this stuff:
Yeah.
ghosts, and UFOs, and NDEs, and Bigfoot, and all of it. And you know, what's it like? What's it like to see a ghost?
Well, there's different types of ghost experiences. There's the residual energy type. It could just be a ball of light, or it could be a full body manifestation. I've seen full body manifestations clearly twice. Once in Austria, my ex-wife's grandmother came to us, and it was a dual experience. It was me and my ex-wife lying down in bed. I woke up and I knew it was her grandmother because there was pictures all over the house in this old farmhouse in Austria, in the Alps. Beautiful Sound of Music type place. You know, it's beautiful.
Wow.
And in this old farmhouse, and I saw her in the corner of the room by this, what the Germans call a Schrank, you know, or the Austrians call a Schrank. It's kind of like a wardrobe, you know, and it was her wardrobe. So she was right next to it, and she didn't look very happy. And I woke up my ex-wife now, and I told her, I said, "Do you see what I see? Is that your grandmother?" And she woke up and she said, "That's my grandmother." And I said, "Yeah, that's what I just told you. It's your grandmother." And she said, and I said, "I'm not dreaming, right?" And I was like going like this and pinching myself. And he said, "You're not dreaming. We're both seeing it." Yeah, we both saw it. So and then she disappeared. The next morning, we went down and talked to her aunt, and we said, "Hey, guess what? We saw grandmother last night in the room." And the aunt, without missing a beat, she's like making breakfast, and she said, "Oh yeah, we see her all the time." You know, it's like nothing to them. It's like, you know, they live in this little, you know, village in the Alps, and this is their life. You know, they're surrounded by ghosts. They're surrounded. I mean, it's just, they're all around you, Terry. You will see one. You will see one, or they will see you, maybe before you see them. And then it will manifest itself. And we talked to the village priest, and he said, "Oh yeah, she lived a tortured life. She died in an insane asylum, and you know, it was a horrible experience for this poor lady." And he said, "Yeah, a lot of people see her all the time." So I think in those out of the way places, that's probably where you'd have a better chance than in the busy everyday world, you know, that we live in. And the other one was on a job interview in New Hampshire, in New London, New Hampshire. And I had to stay in this old academy building, in this creepy old, you know, early 1800s building, a bell tower, scraggly, scary looking trees outside, just like from a Stephen King novel. The guy who picked me up at the bus station drives me up there. He says, "You're going to be staying here." And I said, "Oh, this is great." This, you know, walked in there, it was all this antique furniture. My room was filled with beautiful old antique furniture. It's just gorgeous place, right? Old place. And I said, "Who else is staying here?" And he said, "Nobody, you're the only one. I'm in this scary old building all by myself." I said, "Okay." And so he left, and then I was getting ready for bed, brushed my teeth, went to lie down, read a book. And I started hearing noises, like people were downstairs. There was chairs shuffling, footsteps. So I thought that was the caretaker guy that had come back. So I went down to the edge of the top of the steps, and I said, "Hey, Charlie," or whatever his name was. I said, "Are you there? Who's there?" And when I said something, then the noises stopped. So it obviously wasn't him. So I went back to bed, started reading my book, thought it was just my imagination. The noises started again. And it just got worse. More noises, more people. it sounded like there was a crowd down there with chairs moving around, rustling around. So I just pulled the covers over my head and I just got through the night. Well, the next morning I woke up and I was getting ready for my interview, and I met a guy who was cleaning the boardwalk there in front of this old coffee shop that I was going to get some coffee. And he said, "You're from out of town, aren't you?" He had that New England accent, you know. "You're from out of town, aren't you?" And I said, "Yeah." And he said, "Are you here for the college?" And I said, "Yeah, I'm here for a job interview." And he said, "Where are you staying?" I said, "I'm in the old Academy building." And he looks at me and he said, "Did they tell you it's haunted?" And I said, "No, but I had an experience last night." "Oh yeah, it's one of the most haunted places in New England." I go, "Oh, great." You know, I was staying in a haunted place. And I said, "Well, I made it through the night." And he said, "Well, good luck to you." He said, "Last week, there was a lady in for a job interview at the college. She didn't make it through the night. She went running out into the street, and the police had to go pick her up and take her to a hotel in a nearby town or whatever." I said, "Well, at least I made it through the night." So maybe that's the part of the job interview. I don't know.
Yeah, I think you were set up when I read
I
that.
think I was too. So I went through the job interview thing, and it got late and the president made me wait, and I missed my bus. So I had to stay another night. And I go, "Oh man, I got to stay in that haunted place again." So that night it started again. You know, the night came, all the noises, and I had an old flip phone, and I called my now ex-wife. I called her and I said, "Hey, all this stuff is happening." And she said what most people would say. She'd say, "Get out, get out."
Yes.
And I said, "I can't, there's no place to go. Plus I don't want to look like I'm a scaredy cat or whatever. I can make it. I've seen stuff, haunted stuff has happened before. I made it through last night." And she said, "Okay." And then it just kept getting worse. And then all of a sudden, it wasn't just voices and chairs moving around, tables moving. There was this old Victrola. I heard this, that wind up thing, like it goes, like that. I go, "Oh no, it's just getting worse." And then all of a sudden it reached a crescendo and then it stopped. It was just like, it got turned off. And then, so I pulled the covers back down, and in the corner of the room, there was a full bodied manifestation of a lady, a really dour looking Puritan lady, with the bonnet and everything. And she was just looking at me. She didn't talk. So it must've been some residual thing, not an intelligent spirit, that communicates with you. And I thought, "Oh my gosh, this is horrible. This is bad." And I was like really frightened. And I just said, "I'm going to make it. I'm somehow going to make it." So I said, "I don't mean you any harm. I'll be out of here in the morning." And I found out later that that building was a women's college initially. So she was actually, the woman I saw was the founder of the college. That was Susan Colby. This was Colby Sawyer College in New London, New Hampshire. And I didn't know it at the time. I just know it was some old lady. I said, "Hey, I'm sorry. I'll leave in the morning." So eventually she went away. And then I looked up some old paintings that were on the upper floor there outside of the bedroom. And I found a painting that was her. And that's how I found out it was Susan Colby. And it looked just like her, the ghost that I'd seen. So when I got home, I didn't get the job, by the way, for whatever reason. But I think it was because the college president asked me, "If you were to give our college a grade based on what you've seen, what grade would you give it?" And I found myself in those Scandinavian moments of honesty. And I said, "Well, I haven't really seen everything, but for what I've seen, I'd say about a B minus." The correct answer is A+, right? You don't tell a job interview, So I was trying to be too honest, and that wasn't right. But anyway, so when I got home, I did all the research and found out that, yeah, Colby Sawyer College, and specifically the old Academy building, was one of the most haunted places in New England.
Did she look solid when you saw her? Did she look like a human being?
She was full-bodied, but she was semi-transparent. And she wasn't communicating with, she wasn't like telepathically or talking to me. So I think it's kind of like you're seeing a holographic image. And I think it's as a residual ghost, like a tape that's playing through over and over. And but she was very upset that I was there. I could tell the look on her, unless that was the look she naturally had. I don't know. She didn't seem to be happy, but she didn't communicate with me at all. Although her being there did send a signal, a very clear signal, in that and of itself. But yeah, those are two experiences that I've had with full-bodied manifestations. So there's no denial. You see it with your own eyes, you feel it, and that's just her. Then there was all the sounds and the Victrola and all that stuff. I mean, it was a full package deal. And I read that other people had stayed there visiting professors, people that got snowed in that couldn't drive home. They had to stay in the old academy building. So there were a lot of stories about, and that wasn't the only haunted building at the college either. That was just one of them. But I mean, if something like that if you're not already a true believer, you're a true believer after that. And my ex-wife still couldn't believe that I spent 2 nights there. But when you have a paranormal life, I wasn't afraid that they were going to kill me, and I didn't think they were going to scare me to death. So I just kind of, I hunkered down and got through it.
Roll with it.
Yeah, there's nothing else you can do. It's quite a show, and it's a good story.
Erin, you ever seen a ghost?
Oh yeah. Oh yeah.
Oh, yeah.
I have many times, sleeping, awake, full bodied, or just sort of see through, lots of words and comments. And yeah, I think that, the residual or the entities that are kind of trapped here are the ones I deal with more. I don't deal with, Aunt Tilly come back to talk to somebody. That's something that I don't notice as much, or it's a little bit more difficult. The vibrations are different. But yeah, I'm thinking, Terry, that you are going to be experiencing some things here pretty soon, since you've invited it in.
Yeah. Do you want to see
yeah.
a ghost, Terry? Do you want to see one?
I guess I do. I guess so.
Yeah, start with the residual one. That would be the better,
I'll ask.
Yeah,
I'll
just
also ask for some protection because I don't want Dr. Holmes in my home.
no, you don't. No,
No,
nothing.
you don't want that.
You want ghost light. Ghost light. That's what you want.
Yeah, start easy. Yeah. Erin, you have some amazing photographs you've taken in your room. I'd love for Dr. Bruce to see those sometime.
Oh, I've seen some of.
He's seen some of them. Yeah.
It's amazing. It's startling evidence that these entities are in your room, and who they are, what they're doing, I don't know, but it's pretty clear. I mean, it's really clear that and it's not, reflections or, bugs or anything like that. It's
right.
It's absolutely amazing.
And I haven't been paying attention lately since I'm in a different location, but I do know that since I have moved, there has been some activity, just not as much. I think that where I was living, it was pretty active. But yeah, no, I'm still getting things, and I'm really interested in what they are, who they are, and all this as well. I don't receive any information when they're flying around.
You know what's interesting? Do you have the same furniture in your room that you had in the other place?
No, not yet.
Okay, because sometimes it's attached to different, items in a particular house, or it could be in that house. Or if you still have the same things going on, then it's following you. Is what's
right. Yeah. So yeah, staying with my father right now, I don't have any of my furniture, but here in a month or so, I will have my own place and my stuff back. So we'll see what sort of changes we have then.
And now she has a really good night vision capture video camera. Do you have one of those, Terry, that you could put in your room? Maybe you'll see stuff all around you at night.
I don't. As a matter of fact, I just had not long ago, maybe 6 months ago, I had to take our digital clock out of our bedroom because I kept waking up on the triple digit thing, and it started to freak out my wife. And Robert Hastings and I talk about that. It happens to him all the time. 444 things. So yeah, you know what? I think that'd be an interesting thing to do.
They're fairly inexpensive. I know Erin turned me on to it. I can't remember the name of it, but she could probably.
Wise Cam. Here you go.
Yeah, it's really simple to use, and it's very good. Picture.
Move it, but yeah.
Night camera.
Amazon.
Very little. Amazon. I think it's $25.99, something like that.
Yeah.
Ooh, I can afford that.
You got to hook it into your camera, into your phone, your smartphone.
Okay.
Or you program it through it or something like that. I don't know. You got to have the smartphone in the room with it. Yeah. And then you got to get the little chip. I learned that. You got to get the little, it doesn't come with it, right, Erin? The little chip you need.
Memory chip?
I have not ever dealt with it. Yeah.
It goes in the camera. Yeah. So that way you can record it and look at it later. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, actually, mine records straight into the app on my phone, so
Oh,
I
really?
don't have
Okay.
a, yeah, I don't have a chip, but I really need to get all of my stuff off of my phone and into a computer before my phone is filled up with these recordings because things are happening so much.
I mean, her room was so active. I mean, it's better than any of the stuff you see on these paranormal shows. I mean, the
Right?
stuff you see there is, you know, nothing compared. You know, they might have one thing, you know, flying across the room or whatever, but she's got multiple things going on. I mean, different sizes and shapes and speeds, and yeah, I would really be interested, Terry, what you would pick up.
Yeah, I was
Hmm.
blown away by Erin's photographs.
Yeah.
And, I've had, like you, I know you have photographed things in the sky.
Mhm.
And I've seen and photographed things in the sky lots of times, well, as you know. And yeah, that'd be a real interesting thing to do. I think I'm going to drop 25 bucks and do that.
Yeah, I thought it was worth it, and yeah, I haven't been able to activate it much because Ginger doesn't like having cameras in the, in the bedroom.
Well,
So
that's one
she,
thing about living alone.
yeah, there you go. So you don't have to. There's no compromise. You don't have to compromise, you know, whatever. So she said, I don't want that damn thing in here. She'd like put a blanket over it or something. I said, okay, guess I have to figure out something else.
You will. Yeah. Yeah. So,
Yeah.
uh, real quick, what are your three books and what's your fourth one again? And then this
Uh, the
snark.
first one was Timeless. Second one, Timeless Deja Vu. Third one, Timeless Trinity. Yeah, so that's the first one. So it's a trilogy. And then the book Anzar will come out later this year. So that'll be my fourth paranormal book, but it's not part of the trilogy, so it's a standalone book.
Yes.
And then I got the two comic books, Snark, which is available now, and Snark 2, which will be available uh, in March, sometime this coming, in the next month. And I got lots of academic books too. If you go to bruceolofsolheim.com, you can see all the other kind of like normal things I've written about: the Vietnam War,
Yeah.
women's leadership, uh, foreign policy in the Nordic region. I'm pretty much a traditional academic until Gene came to me and told me, "No, you're not. You're going to start writing about this stuff." So, and it was a little bit after when you published your book. I think I was a year later, or maybe 8 months later than your book, Terry.
Yeah. We're pretty close in time. Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't even remember how we ran into one another.
It was on one of these paranormal shows. You had just been on, and then I caught your show, and then I was on after you. And then I just thought, I got to talk to this guy. And then we just struck up a friendship based on, and I can't even remember the name of the show now.
I can't either.
Yeah. But it was pretty early on in your book tour, I think.
Yeah.
Your virtual book tour.
Well, I'm glad. It's glad to meet a kindred spirit,
Yeah, and I was able to connect to your friend who would, when that happened to you at Devil's Den, and that was it was really cool to be able to connect to your friend.
You know what? I got to tell the audience. Dr. Bruce was able to connect with a friend of mine, Toby, and of course that's a nom de plume. That's his pen name.
Mhm.
But I had a special name that I called him that no one knew, and you nailed it. Also, you said that he gave me a black knife,
Mhm.
a black handled knife, which was very significant. We had been on an ambulance run to an F-101 that was on fire. It was hooked up to an APU unit in a spark or something. And I went up to get the pilot out, and I had a knife that was duller than it should have been to cut the guy out with. And uh, I don't think it would have made a difference to the outcome ultimately. But the next week, he gave me a gift, and he gave me a nice sharp knife, nice knife with a black handle. I still have it. So that was very significant.
Yeah, and I didn't know, of course, about that. I just wanted to talk to him, and of course, I always think, it's not me. I'm just the conduit. He decided he wanted to talk to me, and wanted to say a few things to you, which I shared with you. And I think it was very significant for you. And that's what it's all about. And I think Erin would agree that it's not so much about being 100% accurate when people ask you to connect to friends or loved ones. It's about being helpful and maybe providing them with some kind of closure or some kind of, something. And if you can do that, then that's what these abilities that we have are meant for us to do. That's what we're supposed to do.
Validation for people that their loved ones
Mm-hmm.
survive, albeit on a different level of existence.
Yeah.
A lot.
Because oftentimes we have unresolved business with our friends or loved ones who passed on, and so it's an honor to do that for people. And I don't people who charge money to do these kind of things, the mediumship, I think that's fine as long as they're honest with their clients. Everybody deserves to make a living, and if you got a skill like you're a carpenter, a plumber, a psychic, a medium, that's fine. But as long as you're not cheating people. And the problem is there are charlatans out there who claim they're very good at probing, or what do they call it, cold reading, stuff like that. And that's a trick. That's not real. And what I believe in is the real stuff. And I know real mediums, real psychics, and it's a very different vibe you get from them. And but I don't charge because I got a day job, so I just do it for friends and family members and stuff. And I'm perfectly happy with that.
Well, listen, I'm perfectly happy that you joined us today. I know Erin is thrilled that you joined us too, aren't you, Erin?
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Thank you, guys. I really appreciate it.
Well, yeah, listen, before we let you go, I want to ask our audience to please like and subscribe. And if you've got a comment about anything that Dr. Bruce shared with us, leave it. We'd love to hear from you. But please do hit that like button. We're just getting this off the ground, and it would be very much appreciated. So next episode, we're going to have Fiona Harris. Is that right, Erin?
That's right.
That
is right.
Yeah.
Yeah. Fiona.
Fiona is the lady that she read my book and she got a hold of me, and we had she offered to do a past life reading for me. And so she said, just call me. And I called her. She's up in Calgary in Canada. And we had a conversation on the phone, just chit chatting about stuff. And I said, so how do we go about doing this past life reading? And she said, oh, I'm done. I just finished. She said, I'm going to go light a candle, meditate, and then I'll type it up for you. And that probably makes perfect sense to you, Dr. Bruce, I bet.
It can be that spontaneous. Yeah, it depends on what the signal line is, how strong it is, how strong the connection is. And if you're dealing with people who've passed on, how willing they are to want to talk to you.
Yeah.
You don't necessarily have control of all that stuff. So
again, join us next time. Erin, any parting words? Dr. Bruce, any parting words?
Just keep, remind everybody to be the light, as my comic book character Snark says, be the light. And we've shared that a lot in our correspondence. So find that love within you and spread that around.
Good advice. Thank you all. See you next time.
Yes, I do want to send out shout outs to David for putting together all of our shows for us right now, and then also to Tony Kane for the music at the beginning and the end of the show. I do want to end the show today, which will be added on later, the theme song that my mother so kindly wrote for me and commissioned a band named Gleewood to put to music, and it is just a wonderful, wonderful piece called Starseed Child. And so we'll end you in the show with that. So thank you, everybody, and we'll talk soon.
Thank you. Bye, guys.
Bye.
All right. Bye-bye.
Standing under the great beyond, when darkness covered the land, stars and planets were